Good morning to everyone, and welcome to this panel one, which title, like Mario said, is Managing the Global Crisis, Outstanding Practice in City Response to the COVID-19. Well, my name is Miquel Molina, and I'm a journalist, and I write a weekly opinion column in La Vanguardia, which is about culture and global cities. And then we have two panelists, Diogo Ivo Cruz from Lisbon and Tom Miskin from Oslo. And they are supposed to talk during 15 minutes each, and then we will give way to questions from our attendees until about 11:30. Briefly, the title of this panel refers to the fact that the smart way some cities are responding to this health and economic crisis has had a clear impact to improve their international perception as safe and attractive environments for investment. Good local management of the pandemic puts them in a better position in terms of city branding, which is something very useful for the times to come. 2 months ago, when Spain and Barcelona were still in lockdown, I interviewed Mr. Greg Clark, the professor who has intervened at the start of this webinar. He told me that every city should investigate what their own DNA was, and they should do this before launching promotional campaigns. In the case of Barcelona, Mr. Clark told me that the mass tourism was in no way part of Barcelona DNA. In his opinion, a city like Barcelona should base its branding strategy on creativity, technology, and quality of life. But first of all, Professor Clark stressed cities must work hard to solve their health crisis. Not doing that, there is no way you can start a promotional campaign or looking for your new branding. So we have here represented today in this panel 3 cities that are in different stages of this process, that is the fight against the pandemic. Oslo, which is represented by Tom Miskin, has achieved very good results, which contrast with those of the capital of its neighboring country, Stockholm. And Lisbon, represented here by Diogo Ivo Cruz, had initially managed the crisis quite well, but things have gotten worse in Lisbon in the last week, as you may know. Finally, we have Barcelona, the city hosting this webinar. As you may know, we have gone from being a post-COVID-19 city to be again a COVID-19 city in just 2 weeks. There is no pressure in hospitals now, and people from Barcelona are trying to lead their normal lives. But the fact is that infections continue to grow and they are not still under control. So on the Lisbon side, we have Diogo Ivo Cruz, who is the project director and interim manager of Invest Lisboa, the Lisbon Investment Promotion Agency. He holds an MBA from AES Business School and a Master in Integrated Environment Studies from the University of Southampton. Diogo has had a diverse career from scientific research to environment project management, and he's co-founder and manager of a technology startup. For the past 10 years, Diogo has been deeply involved in the international promotion of Lisbon as an investment destination, enabling the implementation of investment and business projects in Lisbon. Let's start with Diogo first. I like to remember you, all the attendees of this webinar, that you can ask questions to the panelists using the chat feature of the Zoom platform later. And my first question for Diogo would be, of course, it's an unavoidable question, which is the current situation regarding the health crisis in Lisbon and in Portugal in general. Please, Diogo.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation and for allow me this opportunity to be here. Going directly to your question, as you mentioned, Portugal started very well dealing with the COVID crisis. We locked down the country very early and managed to reduce in our spreading of the situation to a manageable level very early on. It's true that in the last few weeks, as in other countries and other locations, we have been having increased numbers, and that is the result mainly of the return, the opening of the economy, and that was necessary. But comparing to other countries in Europe, we are in a very controlled situation. Our hospitals are there's no pressure in our hospitals. We had at the moment a total from the beginning a total number of around 46,000 cases. 31,000 are recovered. We have unfortunately 1.6 thousand casualties, and we have tested around more than 10% of population, so we are 10 million, so around 1.6 million tests were already made. We are I think the health situation is not solved, of course, and we are preparing for eventual new waves, as all countries, but it's under controlled, and as I mentioned, our health services are there's no stress there. We have I think the situation is very much under control with all the measures we have to take to make sure that everything continues like that. The other impact of this situation that we have is, of course, as everywhere, we have a very strong economic impact, and in particular in Portugal, where tourism is a very important sector, and where our company, we came from a crisis before that, and our companies were more exposed to an impact from economic impact from this disease. So the government and the city of Lisbon took some measures to try to defend our economy in the city. The logic in these matters were first to increase and to protect the liquidity of the company, of the companies, and in the second to provide some cost relief. So the measures were focused on preventing job loss and company loss during this lockdown and the following month. There were for the liquidity measures, there were created some credit lines to guaranteed by the state to offer some liquidity to companies, and the cost relief measures were focused on postponing costs with moratorium of the state obligations, and also moratorium on credit payments to banks and loans, etc. Also, there was a measure of a simplified layoff to allow companies to send their staff to home without a big loss of income and to prevent unemployment. These were the government measures, but the city also put on a strategy based on three objectives. One was immediate support, with measures such as offering support to company, reinforcing social emergency funds for families and social institutions, extending the support system to agents and the cultural sector, which was very affected, that were not covered by municipal support. Also anticipating payments for suppliers of the city, namely architects, engineers, technical service offices, and also speeding up payments for cultural entities that the city was already within a contract. The second objective was minimizing the crisis, the effect of the crisis. Again, two measures. One was guaranteeing revenue by implementing and guaranteeing the implementation of the investment plan for 2020. And so this is an investment around 620 million euros that was guaranteed that would be implemented. Also making regular purchases of products and fresh products on the fairs that were closed due to the lockdown, ensuring full payments for contracts already signed, so that we could guarantee the revenue and also keep the confidence of the market. The city also tried to reduce costs by exemption rent payments for all commercial establishments, social, cultural, and sporting recreation institutions that were in municipal buildings. The suspension of rent also for payments or all municipal dwellings for families. Suspension of collection of all taxes related to the occupation of public spaces, etc. So, and also the suspension of every rule that would originate an increased cost on local companies. Finally, the third objective was relaunching the economy, and this was mainly the big preoccupation was generating confidence, and what the city did was making sure that the urban licensing kept on full operation, and also digitalize the licensing procedure that would make it more faster and give it more reliable and make it more predictable and easier for companies. So the investments that were already being made and that will be made in the city in terms of real estate would have an assurance of a good, fast and good urban licensing. Also the creation of marketplaces for a marketplace that joins the cities and institutional municipalities needs with the skills that could be offered by the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Lisbon. As I can mention, and as I will mention in a minute, the city of Lisbon has a very strong entrepreneurial ecosystem of startups, and this market was created for institutional entities of the city, including the city hall, to place their needs, the problems that could be, and launch the challenge for the startup community to help solve these problems and create a offer demand platform. And also, finally, the support team for micro, small, and medium-sized companies was created. It's called Empreender Mais, which is very focused on supporting, on providing information about the measures, the credit lines, the measures to minimize costs that were put to place, and helping micro, small, and medium-sized companies to take full advantage of this by providing information, by providing consultation, and also creating some programs specific for some sectors, startups, for example, that to minimize and also to support these companies. So in terms of the measures and what the city has been doing to promote the economy and to help minimize this impact, it's more or less that. I don't know if I should go to the future now, or you want to pass the word and then we can back to this?
I would like you, if you dare to rate how the local authorities in Lisbon and the national government in Portugal had managed the crisis. Your opinion?
I think the health response was very good and still very good. Of course, this is a new situation all over the world. I don't think there ever was in the history a global lockdown, of course, and so this is a very new situation. There was much that was and still is unknown about this disease and how it evolves. And so I think the response was, to be honest, very, very good. It was very important at the beginning to make sure that the health response could match the challenge, and so it was important to lock down. And now I think it's important, like we are doing, to reopen now that the things are much more controlled, but we have to keep monitoring and to make sure that the response capability of the hospitals and the medical teams are not surpassed. I think that's the main indicator, and as far as that, we are managing. And I think it's a difficult balance between, we have to open the economy, of course, otherwise the impact would be very, very strong, but we have to keep the health issue under control as well. And I think we are managing. Of course, with the opening of the economy in June, there was an increase in numbers, but they are very located focus of the focus are very located, and so far I think everything is under control. So I'm optimistic. I heard yesterday that there are some very good advances in the vaccine part, and I think once the vaccine will be the turning point, and the possibility of complete opening of the world economy. And so I'm optimistic, and I think our response is responsible and balanced.
You have also in a few weeks a big event which will be very helpful for the Lisbon City branding, which is the European Championship football finals.
Yes, the World Health Organization and the FIFA selected Lisbon for the finals of the European Champion. I'm not sure if they will be open to public yet. I don't know if you know that, if you have that information. I think that's a good indicator of the response that we had at first hand. Of course, it could be and it should be, and a demonstration how the city is responding. The response, but I don't think that's the main issue, to be honest. I hope I'm more optimistic about the recovery of the economy of the city, mainly because the investment that we have in the last few years, which were tech-based companies, research and development operation, business service, the startup community. We have an increase, a very large increase in the last few years of investment attraction in these areas. And the reasons why the companies were coming into Portugal and to Lisbon are still there and are still available. It had to do with the quality of living. First of all, because quality of living, I include there political stability, social tranquility, which represents low operational risk and predictability for companies. Lisbon is also very international and open to foreign city. We are considered by the International Survey every year the top 5 of the countries that best welcomes immigrants. The same internations, which is an international expat association that makes a very large survey every year in all countries, identify Portugal and Lisbon as the city where expats, the larger number of expats don't plan to return to their city, so they are really happy here. Portugal is the 3rd safest country in the world according to the Global Peace Index, and all this contributes to a social environment that companies and people are happy to live in. Lisbon is the green capital of Europe, so it's also working a lot on their sustainability and on their future, on decarbonization. And that's been attracting lots of companies because we have been attracting a lot of highly skilled talents that are not only attracted from international talent coming in, searching for this quality of living and the city that offers the best living conditions, but also we produce locally a lot of talent, and that's been attracting lots of companies, and that hasn't changed. And so I'm optimistic about the future in terms of investment attraction, although the economic impact is significant. I'm very confident about recovery. Lisbon has world-class infrastructures, is very tech-friendly, has lots of projects to support innovation and the tech development. And this shift from a touristic service provider city to a startup tech innovating city started long ago, much before this pandemic. And I think that's what will help the city to recover afterwards. We are attracting lots of companies. According to the EY Investment Traction Survey, the growth of Lisbon was the largest in Europe, 114% in number of projects. We are the 8th city of the European Union, the 8th country, sorry, of the European Union that attracts most FDIs, foreign direct investment, in numbers, not considering the size of the different countries. And according to the same project, the same report, the impact that we'll have in the future will, because of COVID, will be around 20%, comparing to 30 to 50% on other locations, and that is due to the advantages that Lisbon has to offer to companies haven't changed with this situation. So I think the recovery will happen.
Okay, thank you, Diogo. Stick around. We'll come back later. And then let's move a little north. On the Oslo side, we have Tom Miskin. Hi, Tom. How's the weather in Oslo? How's the weather in Oslo today?
Grey and 15 degrees, a typical Oslo summer day.
Well, Tom is passionate about entrepreneurship, city development, international collaboration, and travel. He started his role as project manager of Oslo Innovation Week in April 2020. Previously, he had worked in various project management and communication roles in London and Oslo. most recently working for the British Embassy in Oslo. Born and raised in England, Tom enjoys working to build links between his new home, Norway, and the rest of the world, like Barcelona today. First of all, I would like to ask you about the overall response of Oslo and the country to COVID-19 crisis. In previous week, when we compare in the journals, we compare the different evolution of the virus in each country. We said of Norway that you had two great advantage. First of all, a lower population density, and then the fact that people there are not so used to hugging and kissing each other like we do in the south of Europe. Do you think this is really true?
Good morning, Mikel, and good morning, Diogo, as well, and everybody else that's tuning in this morning. It's a great honor to be able to take part in this panel. Yes, so I'll firstly answer your question there about the hugging and kissing. Maybe you're right. Scandinavians do have a reputation for not being quite as close when it comes to personal interaction. But actually, no, I don't think so. We go for the one kiss here and the quick hug rather than the several in Southern Europe, perhaps. But in terms of where we are at now in Norway and Oslo with COVID-19 response, you mentioned population. In Oslo, we have around 600,000 population, and the country of Norway as a whole is only 5.5 million in a large country. So we're very, very spread out. We have, various big cities such as Oslo, Bergen, Stavanger, Trondheim, but there's usually an aeroplane that needs to be taken to get between them. Oslo, like many other countries around the world, went into lockdown in the middle of March. And I think the response from the national government and the local council here in Oslo from that date has been really good. Communication, I think, is something that's been really, really important here, and something that, as a foreigner who's now lived in Norway for 10 years, really has appreciated. So the Norwegian government, they took action straight away. And like we saw, there's been encouragement. So we've been working at home for much of the last 4 months, for those that can, of course. The health service has coped very well. Again, like all cities, we've had to adjust very quickly. And the health service especially we weren't caught unaware, but had to work with new areas around COVID that they never done before, but they've come through that very well. And whilst the numbers are always too high, I think we've had 253 deaths now in Norway, and that number has I think in the last month, perhaps only 1 or 2 have died from COVID. So it's been very, very stable for quite a while now. And in total, we've had just over 9,000 cases. So, the first 2 months from the middle of March to the middle of May, whilst Oslo and Norway never went into a 100% lockdown, like we've seen in other major cities around the world, we've kept very quiet, and we've been encouraged by the government and the local council to keep our distances, and social distancing it's been something we haven't been used to, but I think the government and the media, for that case, have done really well in communicating that message about the dangers. And then since the middle of May, we've started to see this gradual opening up of society. And whilst we've still been encouraged to work from home whilst we can, we've seen really close cooperation with neighbouring countries, especially Denmark. So, before the July the 15th, when a lot of Europe opened up, we'd already for quite a lot of weeks been having these air bridges together with local Nordic countries, and Denmark especially, where we were allowed to travel between. And I think that was a really, really clever decision by the government in Norway, because it allowed us to test where we were at and to monitor the infection rate once travel started over again. So I think it's been very hard. There's been huge economic impact, of course. But when we're talking about the general sense, I think it's been handled very, very well. And then I could just quickly go over to, in terms of the work that we do, Oslo Business Region, which is all about listening to the local startup ecosystem, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and building bridges and industries, companies and people. Obviously, a huge majority of our network has been impacted by this. So we, together with Oslo City Council, the City of Oslo, have worked really hard at communicating the messaging and the funding opportunities and the support opportunities that the local government have offered. So we've actually been working together with Innovation Norway to set up these funds that small startup and growth companies could apply for. And we've seen things like compensation scheme for sustainable businesses that have seen a 30% drop in revenue due to the pandemic, and a lot of money also being put into Innovation Norway and the Research Council, as well as to investment firms, to keep the investment going in these small startups and growth companies. So yeah, I think it's been very hard, and especially the tourism industry. Whilst tourism isn't our number one income here in Norway, it is extremely, extremely important. And the summer especially is when we see huge numbers, especially from Northern Europe, traveling to Norway. So up until this week, it's been extremely tough for them, and the hospitality industries as well. Again, the government have done well in helping out a lot of these companies, and encouraging local tourism. But now, just this last week, actually, I've been on holiday myself, and I've seen already, Italian cars and Danish cars and Dutch cars and German cars, and it brings a nice sense of things are starting to go to what I guess is the new normal, as many people are now talking of.
Yes, I would like to remember all our attendees that you can make questions. You are invited to make questions to all the panelists at the end of this talk. I would like to know, being you, Tom, in front of the Oslo Innovation Week, which takes place in September, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Do you think you are going to have a face-to-face event or face-to-place, like Greg said before, a face-to-face event, or maybe an event which is going to be more digital than in previous editions?
It's a good question. Like you mentioned when we started this panel, I started my job on April the 14th, which was a bit of a shock coming into a new job right in the middle of COVID. So it was quite a few weeks before I actually met any of my colleagues physically. Before I started in March, colleagues had started to plan Oslo Innovation Week for this year. And for those that aren't aware, Oslo Innovation Week is an event which takes place every September in Oslo, and is an event for tech and startups here in Oslo. And last year we had 13,000 attendees attending physically, and over 30% of those were international attendees, business leaders, investors, and tech professionals. And it's really one of Oslo's most important city branding tools when it comes to entrepreneurial and in the investor space. So we had a huge decision to make, like a lot of events all across the world now, is what do we do? So I mean, to come to any decision, we thought we need to speak to our stakeholders, we need to speak to our audience, we need to speak to the people that attend Oslo Innovation Week and those that take part and host events, because it's a very collaborative effort, this. So we mapped out all the different scenarios, and we actually came up with 7 different scenarios, varying from cancelling, postponing, going ahead as we planned to, having a physical event, or going digital. There were 4 of our main 7 scenarios. And obviously, when you're making a decision in April for something that's going to happen in the end of September, with so many unknowns around the pandemic, it was really tough. But I think one of the really interesting parts here from our stakeholders and our audience is that they really wanted Oslo Innovation Week to go ahead regardless. So we thought, we are innovators. We want to set Oslo, on the global scene as being one of the most innovative and entrepreneurial cities in the world. So we decided to go 100% digital. So later than usual, we started our communications, and we've worked really closely with over 130 partners that will be taking part in the event. And we'll actually be building our own Oslo Innovation Week TV studio, where we'll be streaming live the core events. And in addition to that, we'll be having over 90 event organizers that will be streaming their own events. And obviously, things have changed, I think, possibly quicker than we thought. So in terms of improvements, in terms of being able to meet people physically. So what we're actually going to see now is some events having a hybrid type event, which I think will be the future of events for years to come, to be honest, whereby the event will be digital, and somebody will be able to watch and take part from Sydney or Tokyo or Rio de Janeiro, but there will also be a small physical audience at the same event. And I think, when it comes, the mingling and the networking and, the physical part of a conference, that's all really, really important. But I think also in terms of people's time and the sustainability of travel, I think these physical events will be really interesting. And I just would like to also note that, here in Oslo in Norway, we're very lucky to live in a society where technologically we're very advanced. And we've been in terms of when it comes to video meetings, and we actually have something now called Video Valley in Oslo. There's a lot of really great video startups, growth companies, and larger businesses now that allow us to take part in events all across the world, as we're doing here now. And we're seeing bigger companies actually, such as Telenor here in Norway, who have, I think, over 13,000 employees, that they're, in terms of the future of work, they've said to their employees, you can now work from anywhere in the world going forward, not just through the pandemic. So I think this year our event will be 100% digital with small physical attendance. Next year we hope to return to normal, but I think the digital element of all events will be here to stay.
It's maybe going to be one of the first major events in Europe to take place after the summer. So somehow you're going to fix the standard for all these events. It's a kind of a responsibility you have.
Absolutely. We're very excited about that. And we think we have a lot of amazing partners and collaborators, both here in Norway and across the world. And we want to take the positives out of this. So whilst some of the physical networking and mingling may not be the same online, we also see that being digital allows us to reach a far wider audience than we may have had if it was all physical. So we want to show the world what Norway and Oslo is capable of in the entrepreneurial and innovation landscape.
Sorry. I have a question for both of you. What do you think the big events may help for the city branding of a city? First, Diogo, please.
Okay. I think it's very important, the big events, and we have an example here in Lisbon. We were working at the startup ecosystem here in Lisbon since 2012. It is a very young ecosystem, but it grew a lot. We tried to create the conditions, and there was a very big response. In 2015, we were awarded by the European Union the entrepreneurial capital of Europe. But in 2017, I'm not sure now, we attracted Web Summit into Lisbon. And although there was a lot of work already being done, that event helped to, first of all, reinforce the brand of Lisbon as a startup city, as an innovating city, but also because it brought every year at first 50,000 and last year 70,000 people into the city of Lisbon, where they were all together in one place and all connected because it is it's a startup event, all connected in one place, 70,000 people, and it worked very well, the infrastructure. That helped also to showcase Lisbon as showcase that Lisbon has a very strong technological infrastructure, and that helped not only brand the city as a startup city, but show that the city has the conditions to develop here a tech business and startups here. So that was a very important event to showcase internationally what the city has to offer in this case. So answering directly, I think it's very important international events. It's important events that reinforce your positioning as a city in the world, and to show what the city can do and can offer, and also bring people in, because as Greg mentioned, and I saw in the graphic that Lisbon, and I think it was very well put. Lisbon was in the border of, in terms of positioning as a quality of living and innovative city, and that is exactly where we want to be in the future. And I think that's exactly what we are. The conditions that we have to offer are best for these sectors, and so yes, international events are very important for the city branding, especially if they reinforce the positioning that the city wants to be in.
What's your opinion on that, Tom?
Yeah, I completely agree with Diogo. I think it was one of the main reasons really that we decided not to postpone or cancel Oslo Innovation Week, because it's such a key part of Oslo's branding when it comes to the entrepreneurial ecosystem that we work in. And I think big events in general, we have to think differently now, especially this year, because previously, obviously, you'd have thousands of people flying into Oslo and be able to experience things for themselves. And that's why myself and my team have had to think very hard about how we adapt our event. How previously, for example, we would have, I think last year we had 40 journalists fly in for Oslo Innovation Week, which is an important part of profiling our city and Oslo Innovation Week. So, how can we engage with journalists to help profile our city when they can't attend? So, we're going to be creating an interactive and engaging media press room. We'll be giving them exclusive interviews with startups and business leaders via the web, and giving them interactive tours. It's not the same, but it's different and it's innovative. And I think, I hadn't actually, last year Oslo had European Capital of Europe, and we've passed the baton on to Diogo this year in Lisbon. But these sort of awards and events that cities are awarded, and Lisbon and Oslo are lucky enough to have that one, are really, really important at building up the overall brand, which can then be collaborated with these various events that happen during the year. And here at Oslo Business Region, whilst we run Oslo Innovation Week, we also have many events throughout the year, including Meet the Investors. We have Startup Days. We have an event called State of the City. And these are all events that all add up and create the overall brand that we're looking to have here in Oslo. So yeah, it's key.
We have this question by Sioni from Santander, asking how do you think is going to be the comeback of the culture area, like spectacular theaters, musical events? What's your opinion on your cities?
It's a really interesting question. As somebody who likes to take part in these events, I'm particularly interested in it. It's actually been one of the areas that has taken a bit of a slower time here in Norway to adjust to getting back to having, the normality in theatres and cinemas and sporting events. Here in Oslo, in Norway at least, we're now having reduced spectator numbers. So for example, theatres and cinemas are operating around 50% capacity at the moment. And football stadiums also are allowed to have smaller audiences. I think it's a bit of an experimentation at the moment to see how it goes, but I think once autumn arrives and hopefully we see that the summer infection rates haven't risen, that we'll be able to get back to the normal.
What's your opinion, Diogo?
So here in Lisbon is basically the same. As Tom mentioned, that was one of the sectors that were very affected, of course. We are opening up slowly. At the moment, it's already possible to go to cultural events, but with lots of limitations, with reduced capacity. And not all events are open. For example, you mentioned before the football stadiums are not open yet for attendees. Both the government, the national and local governments are very concerned with this and has created some measures to help the cultural sector to cope with the impact. But for sure, as with the tourism, the cultural sector was very impacted by this and still is. Of course, every measure of open up has to be taken with caution, and I hope things will improve, but until we have the final vaccine, I think we will have to get used and adapt to this new situation for some time.
We have a very interesting question from Robert Govers, who is a panelist in panel 3 in this webinar today. It's a question to, like he says, to enhance the discussion. Reversely, how does the brand inform the event? Everyone does tech and startup events, but how is yours different? Who wants to answer?
I can take that if you want. I mean, from my perspective and our perspective for Oslo Innovation Week, ours is different in that it's a collaborative event. So unlike a lot of tech and startup events that are privately run, we're actually funded by the City of Oslo and Innovation Norway. And we work together with over 100 event organizers and partners who host events meeting our criteria under the Oslo Innovation Week umbrella. So we pride ourselves on collaborating with local and international partners to create the 5-day event that we have at the end of September. So I think that is one way that ours certainly differs.
I have a comment by Gloria Romera, a comment on Diogo. She says, I agree with Diogo about the importance of organizing international tourism summits to attract people to our countries. But now I think it is necessary to promote our cities from outside, not from our own countries. Any opinion? Any comments?
I agree. I agree that is very important to go to local markets and promote the city, and we do that. We do that in normal years. We do that every day. But I also think that it's very important that the people come investors come to the city and experience locally. And we here in Lisbon, we usually say when we get to the short list of a big event and they start visiting here locally and talking to people that are already here, to their peers, and understanding how things work, we have a much better chance. So it's very important that we go abroad, explain why Lisbon is important. It's also important that people come in and meet and learn about Lisbon locally, and I think that's one of the strong points that Lisbon has to offer is the local dynamics, the feel of living here, the quality, and all that.
I have another question for both of you. What do you suggest to those? I'm sorry, I live close to a hospital, and there are all the sirens now going on. Well, I think it's over. What do you suggest to those who think that you cannot lose your time talking about city branding while there are still people who are dying or losing their jobs or being forced to close their business? These two levels of talking about things.
Yeah, I can take that quickly first. It's something that's we're very aware of, and I think being living in a country like Norway as well, where infection rates have been low, death rates have been low compared to a lot of countries across the world. We here in Oslo, in Norway as a whole, we're humble and we're very aware. So we haven't been, in terms of outward facing branding, it's been very, very low key. Especially when it comes to tourism and cultural type things. So I think the key clear communication and sort of keeping our feet on the ground is something that we pride ourselves on, is especially important during this difficult time.
I have this comment by Mark Sands, which I would like to share and to comment. He remembers that Barcelona maintains the summer festival Grec, another festival like UPF-BSM, as an exception to the general close down of theaters and cinemas, as we are facing a second wave of contagion here in Barcelona. He says that cultural sector has worked a lot to offer safe conditions to cultural events. I would like to move to ask you, what do you think about introducing, getting culture to help to the city branding, to link culture to city branding?
I think it's very important. The cultural aspect of the city it's fundamental for the city to present to the world the city as a place where you want to be, where things are created, where talent is and where you have options to go and to growth. I think the cultural aspects make the identity of the city. So I think the cultural sector is very, very important to as a means to explain the identity, and the identity is the brand. The brand should also communicate the identity of the place. So it's very, very, very important. And make to explain what place is, to differentiate, to make it a unique place to be in. I completely agree. That's very important, the cultural aspect of the city. We are human beings, and we don't need. We cannot live only on efficiency in work. We have to also have some way of expressing, and our other part of ourselves. That's very important for a city to express that maturity, that feelings, that identity that they have, and it's mainly through cultural and artistic aspects that's possible.
And what's your opinion on this, Tom? I very strongly believe that you may link culture and technology when it's about city branding. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Diogo really in terms of well, here in Oslo at least, culture is a really integral part of how we brand Oslo. And again, having to adapt to how we portray that during these times is different. But I think we're doing a good job at keeping things ticking over, and I think the cultural sector all across the world is probably one of the sectors that has struggled the most. But the Norwegian government have done very well in helping to fund and support the cultural sector and to keep it going. And I think the key will be to actually, we're a lot of us are thinking in the now, but it's also looking forward to the next 2 or 3 years and how that sector will be affected. But I think, it's vital.
Then a final question. I would like to know your opinion about the situation in Barcelona from the perspective you have in your countries.
Opinion in general of Barcelona?
The current situation and the brand of the city, in which way may be affected by all this?
I must say I don't know all the ins and outs of how Barcelona has been affected by the pandemic, but I know that it's an amazing city, and in terms of Norway and my personal opinion, Barcelona is one of the most exciting cities in Europe. It has everything to offer, and I think it doesn't, from a tourism perspective, it won't be damaged by the pandemic in terms of Norwegians traveling to Barcelona. And I think from a tech and startup scene, it's certainly one of the cities that we look towards in terms of inspiration and collaboration. And we'll continue to do so because there's also a great deal of opportunity on the tech side of things here.
I agree with Tom. I think, as Tom, I'm not completely aware how strong the impact of this COVID has been in Barcelona, but I know Barcelona as a tourist and as a visitor for some time. I've been there many times. I think Barcelona is very similar to Lisbon in various aspects, in terms of it's a very ancient city with a strong identity. This COVID is very, very strong and very important. It's the first time that the whole world locks down for such a long time. So of course it's a big impact. But the cities and our cities, they are very old. They've been through a lot, and this will pass as well. And Barcelona, in my opinion, as Lisbon, will keep on because they are an international city, an open city, a very strong city with very strong companies, and all this one day will pass, of course, and the cities will keep. And in this case, they are has very strong identity, a very unique stand in the world. So I think, of course, the impacts are strong, especially for some sectors, and of course, most of all for the casualties that we've been having. But if you have some historic perspective, you will see that this will go away, and the cities will remain strong and growing.
Well, thank you all of you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Diogo. And for all the attendees, stick around. This is the seminar, as you know, is not over. We have now immediately a very interesting panel discussion on City Alliance as successful crisis response strategies.